Are you excited?
I am, yes. Learn about what's on the other side of these podcasts I listen to.
This is like the easiest fun part because it's like, oh, I just get talking to a microphone for an hour. And then it's the part after that's like the real work, the real effort. For a while there, I kind of experienced without doing that part because Joey did all of it. And now I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. That's why you didn't sleep ever.
Wow, that's a great skill for you to be learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, I can edit now. And then I'm like, actually, I can cut audio. Like, I don't know, like the mechanics and stuff behind like some of the settings that are there. I'm like, I get why you did it, but like if you had me like set it for two people and like try and make it sound really good, I don't know if I have the ear to like make it sound the way it should.
Are you hearing it when you listen to other people? Now that you have that knowledge, does it change the way you hear things for the most
little
part?
bit. For example, the podcast I showed you, Chris Hardwick's podcast, I never hear verbal fillers. Do they not use them because they're all professional speakers and most of them are actors and directors and he's a TV host? So does he just never use verbal fillers? Has he gotten really good at avoiding them and really good at speaking off the top of his head? Does he have someone edit it? And I'm not sure because I still hear like breaths and stuff, which is something I sometimes get rid of, and they never like have like long pauses. And so it really makes me wonder, I'm like, do they cut it out really well? Or are they just really good speakers?
Right. Because I've learned just listening to you over the course of 6 months, the improvement and the change of how you've...
Mm-hmm. Especially from our first 4 episodes where it was literally live and me and Joey weren't in the same place. So we had to like wait for each other through the like delay of the internet to make sure that they were done talking and stuff. And those went completely unedited. So
wow.
Now those have a little disclaimer on them that says, hey, warning, don't listen to those. I think those say like skip to episode 12 because that's where everyone's like, wow, season 2 is really improved. And so that's where episode 12 is. But I think at like episode 5 and stuff's like where we were in the room for the first time together using like the same mics looking into each other's eyes, which really makes a difference. And
oh, I'm sure.
I do listen to a podcast with 2 people who've been doing it for like 300 episodes. And then one of them moved to New York when they were in LA. And so they still do the podcast because it's a super popular podcast. But now they have to like edit out all those little gaps and stuff that they have because of internet and stuff. And it's just not as easy to know when someone's going to stop talking and things like that. And one of the hosts tried to edit it by himself one time and it like showed. And it was like, oh yeah, you can kind of hear those gaps and it sounded a little weird at some points. And then so yeah, now they have like a professional editor doing it because it's really difficult. But you know, the podcast is successful enough that it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I listen to the Bobby Bones show sometimes. They are all in different locations.
That's crazy.
So, and that's live. I mean, it's not always live, but when it is live, kind of cool.
Yeah, and
that
can
you can't
you really
even tell.
tell? Yeah.
No, you can't.
That's crazy. I aspire to do that someday, just be quick on my feet and things like that.
Yeah.
For those people that don't know, you are my mom, Miss Amy. That's
my privilege.
Mm-hmm. Oh, your privilege. Ooh. It is a privilege to be the parent of a kid who has a podcast. I mean,
as Emma said, a real live YouTuber.
Who said that?
Emma, when you came at spring break, she had heard your podcast just when I was listening to it when she was over.
Oh, yeah.
And then she met you and she told Naomi, I met a real live YouTuber.
That's me. It's not that hard, Emma. Just telling you.
That's a first grader speaking.
Shout out to Emma, the first grader.
Right.
But yeah, so thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. It's nice to have a little guest and be able to talk about different things that me and Joey might not be as experienced on and things like that.
Yeah.
Because of that, I wanted to ask you kind of about life choices and phases of life and getting older. And I'm kind of in like a changing of phase of life right now with college and things, and I'm growing older and kind of like learning like what I've done wrong in the past and like growing through those mistakes. And I was like, oh, my mom, she's made tons of mistakes. She'd be perfect.
You know them. You know that firsthand, don't you? And yet still here I am.
Yeah, no. And so I kind of wanted to talk to you about that and like see like what you've learned over the years and kind of where you are at in life and what you think of planning on going forward.
Well, you had asked me originally, you asked, who am I? And I think that's something I've really learned a lot about the last couple of years. A long time ago, I probably would have described myself as a mom, a wife, a sister. I was a daycare provider for many years, or an orthodontic assistant. And I'm realizing that if you take all those things away, I'm still here. Mm-hmm. So that isn't who I am.
All those things are like outside things. Those are jobs and like relationships. They're not you.
Right. And then to even go further, there's that ego in me that you don't want to listen to your ego. You're still there. So I used to probably be more defined by my ego. I'm trying to become more aware of that and not let that define who I am as much either.
For sure. So that's just something you've kind of learned over the years, is like more who you are and what you want.
Yeah.
And what made you realize this? What brought this to your attention recently?
Probably coming to a crossroads of not being needed as a mom at home anymore. And just where do I want to go in the future? And I think I came across some podcasts and some books and some teachings that opened my eyes to that. First of all, I didn't have to listen to that little voice in my head all the time, that I could decide what I think and what that I can choose to have different beliefs and different thoughts. And it's really been life-changing the last couple of years learning that.
That was one of the exact reasons I kind of wanted you here, is because I'm in a changing of phase of life with like living on my own and going through college. But you're also kind of in a same changing of phase where, I know it's not a flattering term, but you're like an empty nester. So how has that affected you recently?
I thought I was going to find it more of a challenge than what it is. I actually enjoy it.
Ouch.
No.
Stings.
I loved being a mom.
She said it here first.
No, because I became a mom at age 20, which was great. We wanted that. That was always my focus, is you boys, and I don't regret that a bit, but I embraced it to its fullest, and now I'm excited to see you guys become your own men, and you don't need me like you used to, and that's awesome. I love that you guys are independent, and so now I get to decide, what do I want to do? Like, where do I want my life to go? And it's kind of nice because it comes with a maturity that I didn't have. I didn't take that much time to think about that when I was 20. I may have made different choices, but that really doesn't matter. But I can make different choices now, or just know that I do have choices. I need to take the action to follow up with those dreams that I still have.
Definitely, because you're in a place where it's probably like the most ideal. Like, you're still young. You can still like do things physically that you want to do. You can do things mentally. You can still learn things. And you're not like past your prime or anything like that.
Oh, what a good boy.
No, but like, because you had your kids early,
right?
You're kind of in this phase before a lot of other people are. And so you're not like behind the curve or anything.
Yeah, I have to think about that because like with my career, an outside career hasn't really been of that much importance to me. However, I still have, potentially 20 years that I could work in a career. So I need to decide what I work in a bank now, but is that what I want to continue to do? Do I want to invest in education now for those
15 years
that I could have? If I start now, by the time I'm 50, I could graduate with a totally different degree if I wanted to. At the same time, it's like, okay, we can't be delaying too much longer though. Like the clock is ticking, So that is where I'm at, is making those choices. So very similar to where you're at. 25 years later.
It's probably something that you haven't thought about until like we were out of the house, because we just took so much of like your mental space, that now it's like, oh, you do have all these choices and options that were kind of put on the back burner before, that might have just like put the blinders on, like, oh, it's not about me right now, it's about someone else or something. And
right. Yeah. Learning to think of yourself as being kind of free and with choices available to you that's a learning thing in itself.
Definitely.
So.
I was thinking where I am right now in life, and I try to think about where you were at my age in life. Wow. And where you were is you had a kid. Like, you were married, you had a kid, you were probably like settling down, like maybe had a house, I'm not entirely sure. It's like we were in such different places, and that was just because of the life choices we made, a little bit with like what time it was in history and like what things were easier to do and stuff. It's just kind of weird to think about stuff like that. And so I was kind of hoping you'd kind of maybe like walk me down memory lane a little bit, like kind of starting like maybe after high school and some of the major decisions you've made and how they planned out.
Right.
Where'd you start out at for like reference?
A small town, Concordia, Kansas. Very rarely left the farm. Had spent no time in a city, had lived in the same farmhouse my whole entire life.
With 10 other people?
My 6 brothers and sisters and my parents. Typically, you were expected to go to Cloud County Community College in Concordia, and then maybe on past that. Being the 6th child, I think my parents were kind of tired by the time I graduated. We kind of raised ourselves, great parents, but that's a lot of kids to, help along the way. So after high school, I didn't really feel like I knew enough about going off to university. So I had always had a love for children, and I went to Boston, Massachusetts to be a nanny.
Wow. So from like 3,000 people to maybe like 1 million people or more.
Anyway, that summer before I went to Boston, I met your dad. And I would say for all I knew, I fell in love with your dad. And when I was out being a nanny, I didn't stay the full year that I'd wanted to or had planned on originally, but I came home, and that's when we started dating seriously, and we're married probably a year and a half after I graduated from high school. I did graduate from high school at 17, so I was a little younger than, some people are, and hadn't had a lot of outside,
worldly experience?
Yeah, pretty sheltered. So I really didn't know much different than maybe getting married and having kids, and being a mom was something that I had always wanted to do. So
yeah, and it's kind of all that you'd seen because, your mom just always kind of grew up on the farm and, was kind of a housewife and things like that, and didn't necessarily know you had the options. And
right. I didn't know I had the financial means to go on to college. I did go to Cloud County Community College for a year and a half, and going away to college probably would have been better for me because I just found that a little boring.
It was just more high school, basically.
Yeah. And so there wasn't a lot that was exciting about that. So I just, became bored with that, I would say.
Yeah, that's crazy. So within those first 2 years out of high school, a lot of huge life decisions kind of unfolding and maybe refolding themselves back. So you said you're kind of an adventurous spirit, and that made you want to get out and go to Boston and stuff. What made you come back? Why did you not want to stay there?
I'd never been away from my family. And so I missed family, and I think I just maybe got scared.
Yeah, it was a trickier thing. Just you didn't know what to expect.
I didn't understand about I was truly homesick, and I didn't know that that's okay to be homesick, you don't need to try to stop that. I was trying to stop that feeling of being homesick, which I wish I would have. In one sense, I wish I would have known that homesickness can go away. You don't have to stop it. That's probably been a big thing throughout my whole life, is trying to stop a negative feeling instead of accepting it. So that is still something I am trying to learn, and that I would pass on to you as advice, is when there's negative feeling, you don't need to necessarily try to stop it. You can accept it and learn to work with it, and know that you're going to just have negative feelings and you're going to have positive feelings, and that they're both absolutely okay.
I feel like this situation applies to a lot of things where you wanted out, and so you just kind of jumped to the extreme and weren't fully prepared, and then so you kind of got scared and couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And came back. And I know I do that with tasks and hobbies and stuff, where I just want to go whole hog, and I want to get all the way into this, and then I finally get to a point where it's a little hard, and then I'm oh no, I give up. I'm done. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm scared.
You may get that from your mother. Perhaps I could have gone to be a nanny in Kansas City. But I thought Boston sounded great. Kind of like when you boys wanted to go to San Francisco.
Yeah, we did.
That was, that was your original plan. And I saw myself going to Boston, doing that. And that's why I didn't help you with that for you guys. I thought, they could possibly do this, figure it out. But if you noticed on that one, I sat back and didn't help you. I always try to help you boys if there's some way I can. But I felt like that was a little too big. And so I feel like Kansas City was a great choice on that. And it seemed like it worked out well. So,
and not only did we go not quite as far, but we had each other.
Exactly.
So me and Logan were in the same place together, and that made it a lot easier too, as we had someone to fall back on. If we were homesick, we had each other.
Right. And that helps a lot, for sure.
So I think that was a really great choice in retrospect and stuff, but it's one of those things that's hard in the moment to decide. And when you don't know really who you are, kind of like we were saying before, it's oh, we want to do something exciting. We want to be defined by this crazy place we're going to and doing these great grand things, when in reality it's you are who you are, and you can do great grand things kind of wherever you are.
Right. And I still wouldn't mind actually going off to Boston. There's still that part of me. However, my next step when I came back was I got married. And then I had Logan. And then I had Noah. And those choices, they're life choices. So, and that's fine. They're great choices. But, you know, I can't just go to Boston now, but I can. Jeff has been amazing about moving us to Austin because that seemed like something we could do. And now we're in Wichita, which is great.
So we moved to Austin. Very similar situation from like, I had grown up in small towns and stuff, and we had spent most of our life as a family in different small towns. And then we decided to go to Austin, Texas. So this big grand gesture and a move and to this like big exciting place, and inevitably we ended up coming back for a multitude of reasons. And I feel like one of those things kind of was like family, because now that you're in Wichita, it's a lot easier because you have your sister close by and a couple of your brothers close by, and your parents are close enough that you can go and visit them and stuff too. And so I didn't know if that's something that you learned throughout the years, is that like family, or is like something that you kind of need in your life, or at least a community?
Yes, family is very important to me. I wouldn't say my sister Donna is, you know, she's my best friend as well.
Shout out to Donna.
That's right. Shout out to you, Donna. And so having her here is just fun because she's always been my best friend no matter where we've lived. And we've lived apart most of our life. She lived in North Carolina, Colorado. This is the first time that we've really lived in the same town. So we've really enjoyed that. I think having you boys know your family and trying to create that experience as you were growing up was very important to me. I feel like that's a little bit of a weight lifted off of me now that you're adults. That always weighed on me, is to create that experience for you. And I do find a freedom from that now that you're adults, that you can make your own experiences.
Yeah, you set up that foundation for us that like we know our family, and if you want to be friends now that you're adults, you can choose that because you guys knew each other as kids. It wouldn't be weird at this point.
Right. So, and your grandparents, I feel like they were great influences in your life, and I wanted you to still know them and to still have that in your life. Even though you were in high school, that was still important to me. So that was a negative to Austin. I, like you, and we talked about this, we feel like Austin was a very positive experience for us. Unfortunately, it wasn't as positive for your dad. So that's the main reason we came back. But there's, you know, benefits to all of us for coming back.
Yeah, and sometimes that's something you have to take into consideration when you're making these like big life-changing decisions, is that it doesn't just affect you, it can affect other people.
It'll be interesting to see if you boys live near each other as adults. That's something your dad and I are wondering, because we always want to keep this closeness with you two. But at the same time, the world is, you know, you can move anywhere in this world. And it does kind of stink because sometimes you're like, oh, I wish my family was based out of Destin, Florida.
For sure.
Then we could live there and be with family.
Just every 5 years, we just need to like have a little poll like, hey, how are we feeling about like Florida, California, New York?
Yeah, I can see, you know, I hope we don't have to pick between which one of you boys we want to live by. So if you all could
who we want to see during Christmas and stuff. Yeah.
If you could coordinate that so we'll go where you guys want to go. But that'd be handy.
I don't know. If you guys are here and Laura's family's in Ellsworth, I think Wichita might be like a settling ground for Logan.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. And what about you? Where are you going to...
I don't know, because I do have that because right now I'm getting like a business degree. So that can kind of put me anywhere. Obviously places like to like hire you if you're already close by and you have a tie really close by. And so that'll be easier to like stay near Wichita or Lawrence or KC. I do have these like aspirations to do things and like go out and explore a little bit. And especially like this podcast and stuff, it's like places like California just seem that much more alluring. And like I said, I had that dream. Me and Logan, we wanted to go to California together, and it's like still kind of there, except now it's just me and Joey, and I have a little more experience with stuff like that. So now it's like more reasonable to do something like that, and it wouldn't be like quite as scary, but at the same time it's a whole different experience and would be terrifying in whole new different ways and be hard in these.
Yeah, I like I said, I still have that in me. If your dad was offered a job, I mean, when we traveled, like say to San Francisco this summer and we were in Mill Valley, that place was adorable. I still in my heart, I'm like, I could live here. Though it's a big world out there. There's a lot of neat places, and I don't know that I can say I'm settled in Wichita, Kansas. I won't be annoyed if we are, but I'm not opposed to other things too. And it would be a lot different moving without children to think of, because we always had to worry about schools and you kids, but to just be the two of us.
Do you have any of those negative feelings about Wichita that you're like kind of trying to avoid right now, or something that you're trying to grow and accept?
I'm very comfortable in Wichita. It's a very easy city. It's big enough. It is fun having family around. I like getting to see Owen and Reed, my nephews that feel like my grandchildren. So I do really like Wichita. However, I wish I wouldn't be opposed to moving someplace with more nature-based activities.
Yeah, because Kansas as a whole is just not
Kansas
like
is
ripe
just
for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But I missed Kansas. You know, when we were in Texas, I missed coming back to Kansas, like the lawns. Texas does not have the same lawns as Kansas. It's just a different feel. And
Mom, you're showing your age.
I know, right?
I love a good lawn.
And we have a nice lawn. But it is silly things like that. But, you know, you do start to appreciate that being able to see for miles is something that, say, we moved to the coast. I would miss that when you're living in a place where there's trees all over. Getting to see for miles is really something. So, yep, that is probably definitely showing my age, but it's where I'm at.
Yeah. So we have these like different phases of life, and I'm kind of like in the young adult going off to college kind of phase. And you're kind of saying earlier how you had to think about kids when you make these like big life decisions. But do you think being in a certain phase of life, say like a new parent or something, necessarily has to like keep you in a certain place, or like does that really affect your decision making going forward?
I would say that financials is going to be your number one thing. Should you have the financial means to do these things with kids, like to pay for help, perhaps, to have a nanny, maybe, that's going to be your biggest thing. I would say financials is going to be what holds you back the most. So because we didn't have a strong financial base when we had you kids.
Yeah, you guys were young, and so you didn't have like established careers and things like that.
So that would have been our number one. If you wait and have your children later, or maybe you're just blessed to have a lot of financial support as a young person, then that's going to determine what you're able to do. It wasn't the kids probably as much as financials.
You were saying earlier that you've started to take into account more of like who you are and what you are, as opposed to like these outside forces. Can you explain what some of those are, what you've learned over the years, and how you've adapted to those?
There's a freedom that comes with age, I feel like. Maybe some people get it earlier, but for me, it's taken a maturity of letting go of outside opinions as much, belief that things like my dreams are possible. My biggest challenge with that is now I believe in them, that they can come true. It's just getting my everyday small habits, actions, thoughts to align with them. And that's a discipline that you have to develop. Some people have developed that at a very young age, and that will make a big difference.
Now, have you figured that out, or are you still learning along the way?
I'm still learning on that. You think, even though you've figured it out and you know what it is, to still have that discipline to follow through with it on a daily basis is a challenge. So, you know, your successful people are able to see what they need to do and make that daily choice, and to not listen to the ego of not sleeping in when sleeping in feels really good at that moment, to choose not to eat the healthy item, even though maybe the unhealthy item sounds better, to go to that event even though sitting at home watching Netflix feels better. So to not listen to that voice of what feels great in the moment and choose what is going to align you with your goals. And as you know, like you were talking about yesterday, that you have a 2-hour gap between those classes, that you could go to the gym in that hour, or you could go home and take a nap. Well, going to the gym is going to get you closer to probably the goal that you're going to want to do. However, that nap feels really good in that time frame. So, and for me, it's choosing to get out and maybe go to a yoga class that I don't feel like I'm good at because I haven't practiced it. However, I love the idea of going to yoga class every night.
And being good at it.
Right? And being good at it. But it's going to the yoga class before I'm good at it. That's the kind of things that really are playing in my mind of what am I not doing in my daily routine that's uncomfortable to get me to my goals and what I think would be fun, just to be who I am.
You hear the stories sometimes of like famous entrepreneurs and stuff, like Mark Zuckerberg, who only have one outfit and they just wear the same like jeans and grayish t-shirt every day. And it sounds like some extreme radical thing, but that's just one area where they realized that their daily routine could be improved to help them achieve their goal. And that one seems very arbitrary, but when you think that they've refined it down to that small of a level, you know that these successful people are so disciplined that they can change their life in any way they need to become better at getting them towards their goal. Yeah, and so it really shows that sometimes the little things can really like improve you towards your goal. Like you said, that 2-hour gap where I could go to the gym or I could take a nap. I choose to take the nap most of the time. I'm sure everyone realizes this at this point, but I do think there is a time where you have to tell yourself, like, I need that nap.
Absolutely.
Or I deserve that nap. And sometimes the people who are really good at refining and making those decisions to like improve them towards their goal don't always take that self-care at the same time. And so there's a little bit of that balance where it's like, sure, you want to make yourself uncomfortable and you want to like push yourself towards something even though it's a little scary. But sometimes you got to remember to like hold back and not move straight to Boston or even just like take that nap. And so that one day when like, oh, I have a test tomorrow and you don't want to be super exhausted for that. So you want to be able to study tonight. So I think the big decision making can really be influenced by the little decision making too.
Right. Yeah. Finding that balance. But however, in my history, taking the nap maybe happens too often. Just, the daily disciplines, but it just depends on what it is. If it's something you're passionate about or not, and defining those goals. I've been reading a lot about writing down your goals and defining what those are and even dreaming of what your goals could be. So I guess if you don't have those goals truly defined, then how do you make those daily decisions on what needs to be done?
And I think that ties back really well to like knowing who you are
Right.
and knowing what those goals that will actually make you happy. Because I know sometimes I'm like a people pleaser. And so my goals orient with what the people around me want. And then when I start interacting and like doing these goals, I'm not as passionate about it as I would like to be because I'm kind of doing it for someone else. Knowing like what your goals are, knowing who you are can really help you be successful in taking that next step towards your next phase of life or towards where you want that road to lead.
And then factor in a spouse. What are their goals? What are their dreams? How do they like to spend that couple hours that you may have together? Really can be a hindrance or a help as far as that goes as well.
For sure. Yeah. It's with any sort of group project.
Yeah.
Your partner makes a big impact on you. And sometimes two is better than one. But other times, one's carrying the weight of two. And it can make things really difficult. And so learning how to align your goals and support each other can make a huge difference on how you guys are successful as a cohesive group.
Right. So just something for you to think about when choosing, someone to date or someone to marry, that it's someone who you find inspiring and helpful and that your goals are aligned makes a big difference.
We kind of blew through everything we were talking about. You were a great guest. Like you transitioned to the things I wanted to transition into. You spoke really cohesively and you sound so smart and wise. No, but
you must come from it naturally, right?
Right, obviously. Now everyone knows, like, oh, he's not good at podcasting. Amy's good at podcasting, and he just got a little bit of that gene.
I'm sure that's the way it goes.
I just stole some of that from you. But yeah, thanks for being on this podcast. I had a really good time, and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me as a guest.
Yeah, no problem.
Love listening to your podcast, usually when I'm on a walk. And if I miss my Noah, I just turn on a podcast.
Hey, that's sweet. It's really inspiring to have someone's going to listen. Whenever I'm like, that episode's going to be bad. And I'm like, well, at least my mom will listen. That feels good. Just like knowing that you're there to support me. And so if you're ever like with someone who's doing a creative endeavor and just like making sure that they know you support them can really go a long way for them. So I just want to say that like you supporting me and like telling me that you support me and sending me those texts that are like, I listen to this podcast. That means a lot to me. It really helps me succeed in this. And I appreciate you as a parent in that way.
Thank you. Well, I support what you're doing, Noah. Expect great things from you.
Thank you. And thanks for everyone who's listening. And yeah, thanks for these couple of guest podcasts. If you like them, tell me how you feel about them. And if you want us to talk about certain things, you can check us out in the description and find out where to find us. But for now, bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this Humorish podcast. If you want to see our sources for this episode, check the description for our citations page. As always, you can email topic submissions to humorish.tm@gmail.com and talk to us on Twitter using the hashtag NoahAsked. The podcast music was Watercolors by Vic DeVee.